starting a little different. It's kind of weird to start a sermon series in the middle of Lent, but I chose to do it because we ran out of Tozier, and we're going to start one called The Miracles of Jesus, and so they kind of flow in. Next Sunday we'll have the miracles of the wedding at Cana, the very first miracle that Jesus performed. And then we'll have our traditional our Palm Sunday and Easter services, and then we'll pick back up with this. But it fits during Lent because that's when we like to think about miracles sometimes, and that's when we study that portion of the Bible of Jesus' life right before the crucifixion. And we're doing Lenten services downstairs, so I thought, well, we'll do something a little bit different. And I was reading a post last night from a thing called New Small Church, and they said, and I felt the exact same way, and they said, are you struggling to find something new and different for Easter? Sometimes the struggle is real. Okay? It seems like the same sermon, you use the same sermon every Easter, so we try to keep it fresh. But today's is the gift of desperation. That doesn't sound like it's a gift, desperation, but we'll get to that. I'm going to read the scriptures. There's two, Psalms 113:5. Who is like the Lord our God, the man who sits enthroned on high? And John 1:14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, this series is I realized this morning, is kind of different because the lady that wrote this is Jessica Legrone, okay? And she began her career in college as a science major, okay? And she's very analytical. And then she decided to change from science to ministry, theology, which usually those two don't go well together, okay? But for whatever the calling, she said the calling changed her and how she looked at things, but her brain didn't change. She still looks at things from very unique perspectives. So one of the reasons I kind of gravitated towards this particular series is that I like the way she kind of blends the science, the things that make you go, well, now wait a minute, with the spiritual, okay? And she's got a good look on that. And yes, I am using somebody else's book, but I'm just using it for ideas. And I write my own interpretation of things. And so there would be some people who would say maybe that's not the way to do things, but I gotta have a source. If you think back to when you were in school and you had to write a paper, you have to have an idea from someplace. So sometimes I think these are just ideas. And so this one actually is one section of the book that's been broken up in several pieces, and I'm just starting with this. But I found her stuff interesting because we've all had our scientific thoughts on the miracles of Jesus, okay? Or the miracles in the Bible. How exactly did Moses part the waters of the Red Sea? Okay. Now there is an instrument called a tensionometer that can measure water tension. Okay, so if you lay it on top of the water, it can measure. If you don't know what surface tension is on water, it's what keeps the leaves and things afloat. Okay, and it's what keeps raindrops, or when drops hit your car, it's what makes the drops like this. The surface tension holds it together. And if there's a science teacher here and I'm wrong, just correct me later, okay? But that's what holds it all together. So have you ever wondered when you're watching those, like Cecil B. DeMille's, Moses walking, what's holding that water up? Wonder what the tension is like. Could you walk over and put your hand through it? Or was it like a wall? Was it solid? If you've seen the kids' version, Prince of Egypt, it's an older version, but it's a kids' movie. It's an animated one, and it's not actually real true to the Bible, but it's a good story. It's a great story for your kids, and it does tell Moses' story. But they're walking through on dry ground, and the water is just circling, basically. Okay? But they're on the dry ground. You ever wonder about that, though? Admit it, you have. Okay? How did they get through all that water? Okay? At the wedding at Cana, how did Jesus turn H2O to CH3CH2OH? Now, if you're a chemistry person, you would understand that, but that is, how did he turn water into wine, which those letters stand, or what stands for ethyl alcohol. Okay? So how did he turn water into wine? Did you ever wonder? We hear these stories as kids that he turned water into wine and he did these, but from the scientific point, you're going, I don't know, I can't just wave my hand and the water becomes Kool-Aid. I've got to add some stuff here. So how did he do that? Did you ever wonder, if you really studied this story, was Lazarus really dead? Or was he in a coma? Part of me wants to know if there was a heart monitor that they had on him in that tomb. Was his heart really just beating low? Because you hear all those stories about people being buried alive and that kind of. Did you ever wonder those things? And that's kind of where she's coming at with these things, is we wonder sometimes with doubt. And we tend to look at miracles in specific ways. And the first way is how. How are these things possible? Right? How do miracles occur? You might think, I've never had a miracle occur to me. I don't know why. How do they occur? And how did Jesus do that? And the second part is why. Why did Jesus do that? Why did he heal that person? Why did he heal this person with leprosy and not this person with leprosy? Why did he heal this man that was begging and not this man? And I found that's something I really never thought about too much. But why did he pick the people he picked? Humans tend to ask a lot of how and why questions. Okay? How and why? Why did Jesus pick to raise Lazarus from the dead and not John the Baptist? Miracles require us to look at the who. Okay? So we tend to look at how and why, but Jessica LeGrone says we need to look at the who if you truly understand. Who turned the water into wine? Who healed a blind man? Who walked on water? Psalms 113:5 says, who is the Lord our God? And I can tell you, I've never personally seen anyone walk on the top of the water. If you have, let me know. I've never seen a river turn to blood, although if you read the Old Testament, it happened in Egypt. It's happened in several places in the Old Testament. I've never seen anyone heal a blind person. Now, you may see YouTube videos of things like that, but let's face it, you all go, yeah, right. Okay? You doubt that. Right? The faith healers. Miracles describe a person like none we have ever encountered. And it's something called the difference between transcendent and versus immanence. Transcendent versus immanence. Transcendent means things that come from above us. And things that we can't use our five senses to understand. If God did appear in a transcendent manner, we would probably be very scared. So if you heard a voice from heaven, you know, the clouds break, the sunbeam comes down, and you hear a voice speaking your name and there's no one around, you'd probably think, Let's face it, most people wouldn't go, oh, God is speaking to me. We'd be going, what I do. Okay? What I do. Okay? It would tend to scare us a little bit. It would be a frightening experience. And so I like this analogy. Imagine if you were the creator of an anthill. And so you created all your anthills down here, and you've got your little ants down there. And you look down, and you're watching the ants all scurry about, and you love them, and you want to take care of your little ants, okay? How do you let them know? Do you say, hey, ants, I love you? If you yell loud enough, what are the ants going to do? They're going to run, they'll scurry, okay? Are you going to take a tiny little, write a tiny little letter on little ant paper and stick it in the anthill? Well, that sounds silly to us, but I'll get to a point here in a minute. Are you going to take a stick and poke around? All you're going to do is scare the ants. But if you could become an ant and live with them, learn to speak ant language, walk and work with the ants, and try to change and understand the ants, that's called immanence. The opposite of transcendent. So instead of being above, yelling down at them, you become one of them. That's immanence. Take the invisible, intangible manner of God and puts it all into a package that we can feel and touch and hear. And it kind of goes back to last week in talking about Jesus being all man and all God. And Jesus smelt, and he went to the bathroom and all that because he was all man. John 1:14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. The point to all this, to start off this whole series, is Jesus was the perfect balance of transcendence and immanence, from above and with us. It was a perfect balance. And this is called incarnation. The fullness of God putting on the fullness of human nature. That's the beauty of what we call the incarnation. The supernatural and the natural who meet in one person. Every single miracle we look at will force us to look at the desperation that was brought about, the encounter which brought out the real power of Jesus. So I'm leading you into what's coming here, okay? But every single miracle we're going to look at, Jessica Legrone says, started with desperation. And desperation is not a popular state. We've all been desperate at some point in our lives, and in different degrees of desperate. You can be desperately thirsty, but that's pretty easy to solve. All you need to do is get a drink of water. But you can be desperately sad and not how to solve that. You can be desperately worried about someone and not how to solve that. We've all been desperate at times. It is not what you think of. Desperation is not what you think of when you think of miracles. Desperation is what you're hoping, or a miracle is what you're hoping will happen to get you out of that desperation. But if you study right before each miracle, someone was blind or dead. Someone was possessed by demons. Someone was hungry and there was no food. Someone had leprosy or had a withered hand or had bled for 10 years or whatever. Someone was in desperate need, and Jesus used his transcendent and eminent powers to create a miracle for them. And that's that science and that spiritual blending there. What if the glory of the miracle is not about the power that comes down from God, but more about the specific person that received the miracle? What if the glory of the miracle is not about the power that comes down from God, but more about who was chosen for that power to be demonstrated with? Desperation is a gift from God because it teaches us we can't do life on our own. That's an interesting point. Desperation is a gift from God because it teaches us we can't do life by ourselves. We are all in need of Jesus' help. But the truth is, we have to get desperate sometimes in order to go looking for it. We all have good intentions of saying our prayers. We all have good intentions of being better during Lent. We all have those intentions. But the fact of the matter is when things are going great, it's easy to overlook it all. You have to get desperate. When you start getting worried, when the tornado sirens are going off, when planes crash into the Twin Towers, when those times happen, that's when we get desperate and we start looking to God for miracles. So desperation is a gift of not being able to pretend anymore. And it leads us to being able to see the miracles around us. And you get more about this next week with the water